All right. Well, we'll have a lot of fun with it here. We'll go ahead and begin Wild and Woolly Ozarks episode, I think 9. Gather up the kids and the old folks. Shut down the contraptions and dim the lights. Put away your pocket-sized magic lantern shows. Close your eyes and listen. It's time to strike off on the paths less traveled. Here we experience stories from the hills, the hollers, the river banks, and the brush. It's time to venture into the wild and woolly Ozarks. I'm your native guide and host, Champ Herren. Welcome, gentle people. Fall is upon us. We've had some more rain, which we're very grateful for. And the color is starting to hit. I just hope we don't have another big storm that completely destroys all of the leaves before they can get good and pretty. And it looks like some of us may have that chance. This is being recorded on October 21st. And ladies, that's a new moon. Now, you're supposed to undertake any important task on a new moon. And I don't know what sign the moon needs to be in for you for podcasting, but we'll just act like this is the new moon for podcasting. I want to I've got some stuff we need to talk about at the very end, including the ghost walk and kind of an exciting episode that you're going to have to look up. We'll get back to that at the very end. And then I hope you also caught our Hain't Neither episode with Todd Wilkinson, good friend Todd, and the Ozarks TikTok queen of true crime, Amber Vance. Those were really good. Also, The Root of Ozark Witchcraft, which cultural anthropologist Justin Miner went into a deep dive on what Ozark witchcraft and systems, where did that belief system comes from? Whereas I tell stories on that Randolph may have recorded about an event that happened, he gives us how it got here. You know, this belief system didn't just crop up. It came from something. He does a very good job unpacking that. So be sure to that's a long drive. That's a 2-hour one. So that's at least a like Clinton to Springfield drive. You ought to be able to get the bulk of it in that time, unless you're a speeder. All right. This is a little different episode. I am joined today. Oh, there's another thing I wanted to say before we make a foray into other media and other things. You can, of course, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. But one thing I'm thinking about doing is doing a newspapers.com episode, something new, where we could post the links and we'll take you through the stories, even share how we found this or how we found that. Be an interactive one. We might see who the first 8 people that actually want to be on the call with us, or 5 people, or whoever. So I'm going to roll that out. I'm going to do one solo, and then we'll see about rolling that out. Let me know what you think about that. Send us an email at wildandwoollyozarks@gmail.com if you have an idea, or if you're currently on newspapers.com, you're like, wow, I've really found this. I'd like to unpack it. Well, shoot me a message, and let's see if we can give you a place to do that. So now, excuse me, for the third time of leaving these ladies waiting, actually, if you count the technical difficulty beforehand, 4 or 5 times of leaving these 2 ladies waiting. If you want to talk about cemeteries and burying grounds and haunted places, if I were to go to Taney County, I would want to go to these places with Tammy Morton and Angel Wolf. These ladies are not only retired educators, but they have sort of a overgrown hobby of collecting Ozark stuff and trying to get it down. You also, Tammy and Angel are both members of the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters. Tammy's serving as editor of their new journal, which should be appearing quarterly. If you've not, we haven't really had a chance to talk about the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters, but if you're interested in preservation of Ozarks culture, you can afford the dues and you can buy the journal. It'll help out a lot. And they have some pretty interesting meetings, some things coming up I'm going to let them talk about at the end. Ladies, I'm excited to get this episode underway. Welcome to the Wild and Woolly Ozarks.
Thank you.
Well, how did you two get together on some of these cemetery stories and some of these Taney County stories? Where did that all begin? I think the folks out there, I always try to get them a little bit about these two, my guests, so they can maybe relate to it.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't remember not knowing Angel.
Yeah. Okay.
Our families have been here in Taney County for 7, 8, 10, 20 generations or something. And, we've just always grown up together, knew each other, and both have had a love of local history and wanting to dive into the stories, and to me, that's what it's about. It's not about, just going to cemeteries or restoring old buildings. It's what stories can you find there? And it's going and doing the research and bringing these people to life so people remember them.
Yeah, that's
right.
Great.
And as teachers, I think we do, we call it backward lesson planning. So if we're working on a topic, probably one of the first things we do, if it's older history, we'll start with the cemetery, get dates, names, and work backward from there to find out the history of a place or people or a certain story. So we've done this for years and years. We call it field trips, field work, because we're literally in fields most of the time when we are doing these things.
Two great.
To take my students to cemeteries.
Oh, wow. Two great examples.
Oh, yeah.
Of that you have recently looked into and that are at the Ozarkian Folk Chronicle podcast. Check that podcast out. It's a great podcast. Recently, you have looked into a Taney County outlaw and a murder plot.
Yes.
Those are called the Mortgage Cow Murder, and the latest one was, what was it titled?
It was about Carl Wood.
Right.
I don't remember. It was Murder in the Church, I think, something like that.
Murder in the Church, yes, yeah.
Bad Man Carl or something.
Yeah, but yeah. Check it out. You'll find it. Those are fun episodes. So listeners out there, be sure to check those out. So when you took students to cemeteries and you started exploring cemeteries, where did that begin? Did you have one in particular in mind, or was it a family cemetery that set you down this path?
Well, with my students, I taught a local history class at Hollister High School for 20-some years, and I also did a genealogy. So we would try to go to some family cemeteries, but I wanted the kids to see what you could learn in a cemetery by reading the tombstones, who's buried next to each other, what information, what symbols are on the tombstones, what does that say about that person? Who's buried next to them? Well, is that family? What connections can you make? Then I would have the kids go and research death certificates, try to pull those up, and any other information that they can find.
Okay. And I assume
I think I scared some of them.
To go ahead, you brought it up.
We were at Gobbler's Knob Cemetery, and I was showing my students how to do the dowsing wires. And I can find graves with the dowsing wires, but I can also tell if the person that's buried there is male or female from my dowsing wires. And I was showing my students how to.
For the listener, explain how, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but
no, that's okay.
Difference that you see in doing that?
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
What's the difference that you see when dowsing between a male and a female grave?
With me, the wire, I will use one wire, and if it is a male, it goes left, and if it's a female, it goes right, because women are always right. You think I'm joking? I'm not.
I'm not going to argue with you. We need the episodes. So
I was in the cemetery with a group of students, and I was showing them how to tell the difference between a man or a male or female with the dowsing wires. And this one boy looked at me and he just said, I have always been afraid of you. He said, but now I am absolutely terrified of you. And my assistant principal refused to go back to cemeteries with me after I showed them how to do the dowsing, because he could not believe it. And yeah, so I had to find another bus driver because, well, he was afraid. So.
Well, that's fascinating. You bring up the Gobbler's Knob cemetery. I've got the book here in front of me, The Ghost of Gobbler's Knob. This is really my first Ozarks book I ever purchased. I think I was telling you before we started at the old mill antique barn in Reed Springs, right by the railroad. I may not have the name of that right. It was called the Old Mill because they had even a water wheel, I think, at one point. And
oh, wow.
Didn't power anything. This book is by...
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, the book is The Ghost of Gobbler's Knob and Other Tales of Hill Country. And it's by Viola R. Hartman, copyright 1982. And I'm going to read this because I think it sets the tone. And then we'll just go into the Gobbler's Knob one if you don't mind. When the moon rode crest of a lonely cloud, he would be there, riding his big black stallion over the ridges through the hollows, his shotgun across the saddle, and his jug of corn liquor slung from the saddle horn. His silhouette could often be seen on a rise above Coon Creek, where he paused to unhook the jug, lift it to the crook of his elbow, and take a long drink. Uncle Hardin, they said, had a terrible thirst. And that's who they're talking about, the Ghost of Gobbler's Knob, Hardin Warren. And I'm not even from your area, and I became so fascinated with all the things in this book. Now, I'll tell you, this book's short on ghosts and long on just other stuff that's equally fascinating. But why don't you unpack the Gobbler's Knob Cemetery? Viola Hartman wrote that a long time ago. It's over 40 years now.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, with the Ghost of Gobbler's Knob, the legend has always been in this area that Uncle Hardin Warren was still hanging out around there and riding his horse. And more than anything, he was looking for his moonshine. The legend goes that when he passed away and his neighbors and friends were setting up with him, because that was before funeral homes, and they kept the coffin in the house, and the neighbors, all of his friends, were sitting around throughout the night, and they were all passing the jug of moonshine, and they felt so bad that Uncle Hardin Warren didn't have any, that they lifted up his body and poured the moonshine down his throat. And they think that his ghost is still looking for another drink of moonshine. Now, I've never seen that. I've never seen him. I had a student years ago that swore he saw him riding through the cemetery on that big horse. This student kind of told big, tall tales at times, so I'm not sure that I was 100% convinced, but, all joking aside, people in this area do think that Gobbler's Knob Cemetery has some strange things that happen there.
See, I've always wanted to go, and now you're going to take me because we've kind of talked about it. I want to go because I've always wanted to go. 'Cause I've read this book 25 times probably. I
It's
remember
a beautiful cemetery. Yeah.
and he had Hardin Warren had quite a scope of land
Yes.
right there. I mean, maybe he had a section or more. He had a lot of land. I don't
I
know
think he gave land for like the school and possibly the
the church.
cemetery itself,
I
the
think the
church.
cemetery. Yeah, I think it says that in there.
Yeah.
It says that in there. So nobody did. Is there any older legend of Viola Hartman had to get that from somewhere? What was like the generation or two generations ago? Had they seen Hardin Warren, or was that just to keep kids out of the cemetery?
Well, there's always that possibility. um, I don't know. It's just always, for as long as I can remember, I've heard the tale, but of course, I just think that it's been told over and over. I think he was probably very well respected from everything I've gathered in the community, and maybe people just wanted to believe that he was still around.
Yeah, could be. Could be. Um, are there other haunted incidents around the Gobbler's Knob Cemetery? Any other? How many people are buried there anyway?
Nothing specific.
It's not very big.
No, it's not a very big cemetery.
No,
No,
no.
no. And it's just right there by the highway. I have some really good friends of ours that live across the street from Gobbler's Knob Cemetery. And when they first got married and moved in there, 50, 60 years ago, people were like, "Oh, you're gonna, live by a cemetery. Isn't that scary?" And I was talking to them a couple of days ago, and they said, people in that cemetery have never caused them any problems. They're the best neighbors that you could have ever asked for.
Certainly
They don't,
quiet.
they're not loud. They don't, do bad things. Yeah,
Go back
nice
then.
and quiet, cause no problems whatsoever. So, but they've never seen anything, because I was asking them, and they, like I said, they've lived across from that cemetery for 50 years, and they've never seen anything out of line.
Yeah.
So, again, how much of this is just legend and story, and how much of it is people scared themselves and tried to, it's like, oh, it must have been a ghost.
Right. And
No,
that seems
we'll take you to the cemetery.
I can't wait to go. Yeah, I'd love to go to the cemetery. Sometimes I believe that it's kind of like some of the urban legends that grow up around Springfield. You have a really good spot for a ghost. Like May Kennedy McCord used to say, you need a crop of a bunch of old abandoned bridges and old mills and old barns and abandoned homesteads to raise a good crop of ghost stories. That's not a verbatim quote, but it's the gist of it. But
It's pretty close. Yes.
yeah, I think sometimes those places just invite a ghost story, maybe where there isn't one.
Yeah. Yeah. And cemeteries definitely do that.
Oh yeah, cemeteries especially. I used to walk through the Marshfield Cemetery of an evening. I'd walk in town start my evening walk about 9 o'clock. And I one night was doing it, and it was around New Year's Eve, and there had been a party in the subdivision next, and we're walking along, and a fella got up and asked us how to get back to wherever he was from. And he was intoxicated, but just about scared the life out of me. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
I bet so.
One of the things that people often see in cemetery is cemetery lights. And Randolph writes about this. He writes about various cemetery lights. I think you looked up one that was in Ozark Magic and Folklore, and you couldn't figure out which cemetery it was.
I think so.
And then,
yeah, it was over by Walnut Shade, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to find, I thought I had this thing marked. This is just sort of how things are happening. My dog locked me out of the car the other day. That's a funny story.
Oh no.
Finding this, so yeah. So I took a few things to Marshfield to put in our dumpster, and I had my door open, and she was in the front. I thought, oh, there's some stuff in the front. I need to just go get that out right now and throw it away too. And I petted her, closed the door. As I was walking back, I heard the lock snap. I threw it away. I pushed the hatch, and my door blew shut with the wind.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so I had to rely on the charity of strangers until it could be resolved. Hats off to the Marshfield Police Department for rescuing me. Um, yeah, yeah, it definitely new moon coming. Um, Now there's once again, the listener gets to go through here the cemetery lights. You don't have your book in front of you, do you, Tammy?
Yeah, yes, we do.
Yeah, that just leaving me hanging. Thanks.
You're welcome.
uh, I have different chapters of this categorized, and I've always counted on my memory for this chapter, and it's never really worked. What do you, just out of curiosity, that's the wrong county, never mind. Bit grief. The fellow that saw the cemetery. Go ahead and take us. Did you find out which cemetery that was? Here it is. Randolph describes.
I did not.
Here it finally is. This is page 235 of Ozark Magic and Folklore. People who live near a little burying.
We were on that page.
That's good information now. Thanks. But it says, people who live near a little burying ground on Highway 23 between Spokane and Walnut Shade in Taney County have talked about foxfire lights for many years. A bluish light, they say, apparently about as high as a man's head, first appears among the gravestones and then slowly crosses the road. It moves about as fast as a man walking, I was told. Maybe. After listening to these tales, I went to this cemetery myself and waited and never saw anything. So, have you experienced cemetery lights in Taney County?
There's been tales of it. I've not seen it myself. I think that was much more common in the older cemeteries before there were vaults and when there were wooden coffins, because the lights are caused by the decomposition. That's why you see them in ditches with the wet and the leaves. It will send off a glow. And I think that's why you saw them in the cemeteries. People always think they bury people deep. Well, in the Ozarks, there's so much ledge rock that many times those old, when they had to hand dig those graves, they didn't always get them real deep, and they were wooden. And so they would cave in. I mean, you can walk through old cemeteries and see where the graves have caved in. And you do need to be careful about walking over those.
I've had
my aunt had a very bad experience with that when she walked across one of those graves, and it was wet out and her foot actually went into the wooden coffin. It was that close to the surface.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty spooky for her. Good thing she was tough.
I'd have had to look down that hole.
She probably did, knowing her, I'm sure.
My dad talked about bringing wash tubs of garden dirt to the cemetery to fill in the plot, as the graves collapsed after they were buried in the 30s. They were doing that in the 40s. So the cemetery lights are, and probably embalming has a factor to play with that. Modern funerary custom has kind of killed off the cemetery lights.
It has.
Okay, that's really
You
interesting.
know, those cemetery lights made for good ghost stories.
Oh yeah. Well, I've seen one over here south of us. It's not in a cemetery. It's in a swampy area. And
Uh-huh.
certain times when you get really hot in like May, I'll see. I've been by there and seen it, and I know
You
the
can see that
blue.
little
Well,
glow.
yeah, it's like a blue green glow. There's another
Yeah.
on page 235. Here's one that has always just struck me as being really, really interesting. And it's from May Kennedy McCord. And we're talking the Springfield News and Leader, February 2nd, 1936. You can look it up and look up the couple of weeks prior. Her Hillbilly Heartbeats column, because there are other things of this nature too. She goes into some ghosts and some different things. And dear madam, I read your ghost stories with interest. That's what I'm referring to as the previous couple of weeks. And I will add a modern daylight story. 2 days before Christmas, 1925, four of us were sitting in plain view of Little Creek Cemetery. Now, this is in Wright County, and you can find it on Find a Grave or wherever. There appeared a pillar of fire about 10 feet high with a flaming star at the top of it. It occurred at 4:15 p.m. and was there the same time 3 days later. It appeared 4 times. I have lived here 14 years and have lived inside of other cemeteries, but this is the first ghost I ever saw, and I'm 75 years old. I've been a preacher 55 years. A man went to the cemetery to watch for it and be there when it came. He said he'd throw his coat over it. Well, it came, but he run like a turkey. Yours in Jesus' name, A.J. Goodwood, Hartville, Missouri. If any of the descendants of A.J. Graves are out there, and the Reverend A.J. Graves, and know this story or can put a little more detail with it, let me know. If anybody from Wright County, if you know this or you've heard about it, I would love to have more to go on than just that. What on earth do you think that was, ladies?
I've never heard of anything like that before.
Nope.
I've heard of, balls of fire falling from the sky and rolling down the side of the bluffs into the creek, but I've not heard of pillars of fire in cemeteries.
Maybe it was.
No, our spook light.
Yeah.
Have either one of you ever seen the spook light?
I have not.
I have not. My great grandmother saw it. She went and she said, yeah, they drove their car up and it hovered right over the hood, and and that was probably in the 20s, 30s, maybe.
I haven't seen it. I saw it in college, and I went over there. I've been over there twice, and I haven't seen it since. But we went like 3 or 4 times before we actually saw it. Now, I was over there fishing, bird hunting. I wasn't just going to see the spook light. That was a side thing. But that was, I saw it, and it about the size of a beach ball, and it was kind of green blue, and it changed color 2 or 3 times, and then it took off. It was gone. I don't know what it was. I didn't want to go throw my coat over it like the fellow.
Anybody does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just fascinating. If you're out there in listener land and you have a cemetery light story, shoot us an email at Wild and Woolly Ozarks at Gmail and tell us what it is. We can keep you anonymous. You don't have to, but I'd like to know because I'm still collecting some material. And if there is a place where we can go see Foxfire lights, Tammy and Angel and I will be headed that way just as soon as possible.
Field trip.
Yeah, we would like to do that. Absolutely.
We'll have we'll kind of like when Kramer did the tour on Seinfeld, we'll have the cemetery Foxfire light tour.
The reality tour.
The reality.
Have a bus.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, there you go. You got a bus. So let's.
Yeah.
So you talked a couple of the stories, I've got one I want to share. And then one of the stories was about Old Man Cook and Old Man Cook
Yes.
Right.
and
So
and I would really like for someone to just kind of
yeah, we have that. Okay. So it's in the book, the Ozark Magic and Folklore by Rance Randolph. It's an account. He used my great grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Menke, for several of his citations, his stories. She was a source for different things throughout the book, home remedies, folk magic, things like that. And she tells a story about Old Man Cook, which is from right around here.
Actually, you're just kind of looking across the holler from my back porch, and his place was just on the other side of the creek from me.
Mhm.
So we could almost see exactly where this story took place from right here.
Right. So, and Mary Elizabeth actually lived in this area for a time when she was a child. So I would imagine she probably got the story from neighbors, somebody she knew. She knew everybody. So, but she says another of the stories of supernatural concerns the death of a certain old man Cook, head of one of the greatest clans of the Swan Creek neighborhood in Taney County, Missouri. One of the women told me a curious tale of the night Grandpap died, writes Mrs. Menke. Some of the watchers were out in the yard. They knew that the end was very near. Suddenly, they were startled to see a solitary horseman ride up to the front gate, a military figure on a great white horse, phantom-like and eerie, as there was not a sound. And just then, someone came out of the house and said the old man had died, and the silent rider and the big white horse disappeared.
Wow.
Keep in mind, Jimmy Cook was one of the first settlers in Taney County. He was here well before the Civil War.
Yeah.
And his family and my family came here about the same time.
Wow. That's a wonderful ghost story. There are, the horse, the rider on horseback, whether it's hard and warm or the fella come to greet old man Cook, maybe a gambling debt, who knows? Or
Whiskey.
come to collect Al.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting. Those type of things are so interesting. Has anything ever been seen around that house again or that cemetery that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of. His great-grandson I knew him very well. He used to come over and he'd, cross the creek with his tractor and come and have Sunday dinner with my grandparents. But the family still all lives around here. So many of them are still just right here. But I've not heard the tales. The old log cabin is still standing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very old, and his great-grandson lived in it his entire life. So it's a pretty neat place. The little family cemetery's right behind the cabin, right there on the banks of Swan Creek.
Wow.
It's a very beautiful, peaceful place.
That's another one I'd like to go see. There's another story in Ozark Magic and Folklore, and I really didn't want to get into it, but I'm going to get into it because we're talking about Mary Elizabeth Menke, who that's a whole episode. At some time, I want to unpack is the how, because I read Bright Glowed My Hills, which by her son Douglas Menke, and the the one on the law that was pretty interesting too. I read those couple of those years ago. But one of the things that Randolph, I'm positive it's her, is, are you all familiar with the murder of Jake Lakey?
I've read this story.
So Jake Lakey is a fiddler, and He was a Tennessean, and according to Mary Elizabeth Sankey, he was handsome. He had long, really a big black mustache and long black hair, and he was just a really cut a figure of a man. And he was playing at a wedding, and then they were all standing out afterwards, and the man had a whole bunch of hounds. The father of the couple that had been married, of the groom, and he got to calling those hounds and got them all to barking, like 40 or 50 hounds. And so they came out and shot him and killed him.
Oh,
And they went to go tell his wife, and a big black dog rode beside him all the way, and they'd hit it with a quirt and it would go right through it. And when she got there, you all come to tell me poor Jake's dead. I think that's a wonderful ghost story, and one that kind of like the Swan Creek story. That rider's seen once for one thing.
yes.
The dog's seen once. The dog isn't seen again for one thing.
Right.
That's fun to unpack.
And I think Angel can talk about this. Vance Randolph, like she said, quotes Mary Elizabeth quite often. And she was fairly superstitious. Her mom was Irish, and
They were of Irish and Scottish descent. Yeah.
so, the Scots-Irish tend to be superstitious all on their own, right? And there's stories with them. But I do think that these are things that Mary Elizabeth believed in, or
Oh, yeah. Like she wouldn't whistle in public. Like women weren't supposed to whistle walking down the street. Even I remember brushing my hair. Her daughter was my great grandma, and I knew her. She passed when I was 13, 14. So I knew her very well. And she would always say, don't clear the brush out and throw the hair outside. You're not, just little quirky things. And everybody knows about the salt over the shoulder and all that, but it's, or leaving a hat on the bed. You were never supposed to put you didn't carry a broom through the house out the door.
Randolph quotes her on that in Household Superstitions.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And the thing with
That's
taking a broom
and
house out the door, you had to walk backwards to bring it back in and reverse your actions.
So that's
it's funny how they were.
That's a leftover from an older belief. You would cross two brooms on your threshold, and whoever the witch was had to back in. She couldn't come in forward, or he. So anybody who backed in the door was witch. That's fascinating. And, I'm going to throw this out. There's the talk in the witchcraft chapter at Ozark Magic and Folklore about the three-sided mirrors. The family having the three-sided mirrors, which were for some sort of remote viewing or divination or something, but they didn't know how they worked. They completely... Now, given Randolph's limited pool of informants, I've always wondered where that came from, or where they had heard that from. And that's an Irish.
Yeah.
That's an Irish thing. I think that mirror, the three-sided mirrors, and I didn't know if
well, that's like them covering the mirrors also.
Yeah, it's bad luck
covering the mirror when somebody passes. Yes,
it's bad luck to see your reflection in a house where corpse lay.
Yes.
It's bad luck to cook on the fireplace in the main room of the cabin where a corpse lay. But if you got a lean-to kitchen to the back, you probably are going to be all right. We are doing I'd like to do a Death Customs one maybe this winter sometime. Kind of apart, kind of apart from Halloween, and maybe we could do that one. Have you all on for that one? One of the, and I've kind of shared this story with Tammy a little bit. I'm happy you're here, Angel. Good to hear it too. One of my favorite tomb stories comes from Nevada, Missouri, over in Vernon County. And we don't necessarily always think of Nevada kind of being in the Ozarks. It's sort of Ozarks adjacent, but it's close enough. We're gonna make an exception for the if anyone takes objection to it, we're just gonna have to ignore them. So our story begins when a man named Lon Dorsa dies. Lon Dorsa is young. Lon Dorsa and Lon Dorsa is on Find a Grave. If you look up the Nevada City Cemetery, you can find Lon Dorsa's grave. And what you see there, if you do, is you see this humongous piece of what looks like architectural stone that's been used to pave an area or for a big piece, for a huge lintel piece or something. And when Lon Dorsa died, his widow had a piece of stone brought in on and left in the train yard. And the stonemason shaped it on site hollowed it out into a stone crypt. And I guess there's another stone. If I've been there, I've seen it. It's about 4 or 5 inches on top of that. Well, where Lon Dorsa lay, where his head was, they put a hole and a window and a granite book, a Bible, about maybe 24 inches across on top that was hinged with a lock, and it had a big padlock on it. This whole thing, and these were not rich people by any record, so it's really kind of a mystery where she got the money to do this, because this was hugely expensive. And so every day she would go out there, slide the book back, unlock it, look at him. And they said when his teeth started to go, she became insane. And then she dies.
Oh, wow.
Not long afterward. Okay. So for years, teenagers would go out there and figured out that with a screwdriver, you could just twist the lock open and you could see Lon Dorsa's mummified head.
Mm.
In the 1990s, some juvenile delinquents, for lack of a better word, took and busted the glass and stole Lon Dorsa's head.
Oh.
And so for days you could go to Nevada City Cemetery and see his headless, clothed skeleton laying there without a head. The police found it in some place they were called to on the mantle. And so the head was buried somewhere on the plot. It was not returned, and the book was cemented down in place. And as the local historian in Nevada, Missouri, Patrick Brophy, the late Patrick Brophy, so eloquently wrote for the Ozark Mountaineer, the book was cemented in place, and to the dissatisfaction of many, nothing was similarly done to the miscreants who had committed the act.
They probably got their deuce.
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah, you don't mess with stuff like that.
you know,
That's bad juju.
well, there's several. That's one of the only really recent cases of grave robbing I've got. The other one involves the 3 missing women. There was a grave robbing story
Exactly.
at the beginning of that, which we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, that's the story of the tomb of Lon Dorsa. And if you want to read, that one for yourself, just go to newspapers.com and search Lon, Lon, Dorsa, Dorsa, and you can find it. If you've got a 1991-ish set of Ozark Mountaineers, I think Fred put it in the Halloween, September, October issue. And I may have that year wrong, but I'm just going off the top of my head. Oh, wow. There my outline goes showing. All right. Now, what other tales do you ladies have to share? What other tales from the tombs or the burying grounds or the crypts?
You act like we've got a bunch. I mean, well, you had mentioned a little bit ago about the dog that went beside the wagon
By the riders, yeah.
Yeah. So that is another tale from the Ozarks, and I think it probably comes from the Scots Irish as well, about like, that whole Ozark howler, hell dog or whatever. But there are tales about the shadowy dogs that are near cemeteries or with somebody that had died or whatever. I personally had an experience about 15 years ago or so. I was coming down 65 from Springfield. My stepdad was in the hospital and very, very ill. And I was coming home about 2:30 in the morning. I was very tired, very sleepy. And I was at Bear Creek, right there by Bonnie Brook, on 65. And all of a sudden, this huge black shadow jumps across the road in front of me and goes right over the hill. And there is a cemetery right there. There was also a terrible car wreck there in 2000, and friends of mine were killed there. There used to be 4 crosses right there. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was my imagination, but I was about to fall asleep driving, and that should have kept me up all the way home.
Yeah, that'd do it.
But I don't know what it was, but it was big. It was jumping across the road, and it was a shadow. It was not a live animal. So
it's fascinating. The you saw a booger dog.
Right, basically, yes.
Yeah, the booger dog, and that's we're going to go into it, but there's sort of a whole cultural overlay to be kind of done, because the English have a black dog called Old Shuck. The Scottish, and I can't remember the names of all of them. I remember Old Shuck, but the Scottish have a black dog. The Irish have a black dog. The Welsh have a black dog, I believe. The Germans have a black dog. And I almost think it's a psychological construct to maybe, we grew up in cave.
Very well be.
Our species was raised in cave fighting off horrible creatures with sticks and rocks. So I think we have a built-in fear of some things. They say, and I don't know that this is true, but I've heard someone say that the fear of the dark in a person is actually the fear of big cats.
Huh.
It's a leftover from I guess, the Ice Age, maybe, or before.
Yeah.
Because we're an older species than just the Ice Age. But there's one
You step outside at night and you hear a mountain lion screaming. It'll make you afraid of the dark. I know it's put me in the house a time or two.
Yeah, damn peacock will do about the same thing.
Oh yes.
we were at a place, and I was staying there, and there were a bunch of people partying down on the creek, and I mean, it was just, you just knew something was going to happen. And it was a river. I won't say where, but finally we're sitting out there, and I'm smoking a cigarette or something out on the porch, and I'm like, that's somebody screaming. I said, let's go. Because I said, there's nobody down there sober right now. So I took a pistol and went down there, and it was a damn peacock. They'd all those people that I didn't think you could have poured out of a boot, they were so sloshed, were gone, but it was a dang peacock down there, just screaming at the top of it. I almost shot the darn thing. I was pretty frustrated, but a bobcat will make quite a racket too in breeding season in the spring. Mm-hmm. They will light up the whole hollow. I mean, one of the Randolph stories, back to the black dogs, though, and I think there's an interesting theory, and I would love to get a cryptozoologist on here to talk about the Ozark howler. There's some interesting theories about the Ozark howlers. There's cultural residue for the Ozark howler if you consider sort of the black dog construct. I find that really interesting. Randolph wrote about this fella that died, and all the neighbors were over there trying to take care of him, and the preacher was in there trying to save his soul, and he says, well, we'll just let the tail go with the hide, and then the cabin gets caught on fire and they can't carry him out, and finally they give it up and they go outside, and just as the cabin collapses, they see a black dog run out.
Yeah.
And that may have been, maybe he was a he-witch and that was his familiar or something, but that story always was just kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. I'd love to know where that comes from. But I think it's probably just a story like that occurs.
Yeah, maybe just a story, or maybe the truth. Who knows?
True. Do you have a good one more cemetery tale to take us home with, or something you want to talk about? And first of all, I think...
Well, I could tell you about... I can tell you a little bit about an experience. Go ahead, Champ.
I was just going to say, and there's a little bit of delay because we're on Wi-Fi, and I'm just going to give a shout out to all the patient listeners who, I've got a software issue we're trying to fix. But my point is if you're going out and you're visiting these cemeteries, I would really like to not have any of our listeners go out and cause a problem at a cemetery. Even if you think that may be haunted, you really don't need to be in there at night. Somebody can get hurt.
No.
I've seen idiots take headers on headstones and no. But you can go out and explore them, and you can, learn about them and understand them. And there's probably a local who would love to share with you what the stories of that local cemetery. Be sure to take them up on it. And other than that, just remember, it's somebody's family. Be respectful. So, I'll go.
Yes, exactly.
It is sacred ground, and, it's nothing to mess around with. You go there to show respect to the people that are buried there and their stories. So, and I think that can take us to our last story that we have here. Because Angel and I have always, we don't go to cemeteries for anything spooky or whatever. Even with the dowsing wires, that is to find graves that are not marked or to verify information. You may have one spouse that's buried and there's a space next to them, no tombstone. You suspect that maybe that's where their wife is buried. With the dowsing wires, you can say, well, there is a female buried here next to them. So, that does help somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to like photography a little bit. So when I go to cemeteries, I will be taking pictures of tombstones and different things. Well, I was with some friends, and we had gone to several cemeteries because we were trying to research a couple of stories and different things. And I had taken photos of these tombstones. And anyway, then I went home. Well, a few days later, I get a phone call from a friend of mine, not anybody that was with me that day or with any of the other people. And he said, Tammy, what have you been doing? I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, and this was a person that kind of has a sixth sense, sees things, and this person said, well, there's a lady at my house, a spirit, that has said, tell the silver-haired lady with the camera to tell my story.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, well, I went back through the pictures that I had taken, and I had taken a picture of my baby sister's grave, and lo and behold, right behind it, behind Kathy's grave, was a tombstone that connected to the story that we had been researching, and I didn't know that that was connected. And we put it all together, and apparently the spirit was satisfied. But that's my deal. I tell the stories. I want to find the stories and do that.
How fascinating. How fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
My husband won't go to cemeteries with me, and I can't take my camera in his truck or anything like that if I have an SD card that's been to a cemetery. I don't know. He gets all upset,
I'm reconsidering
about
the field trip thing. I mean, I don't. What's the guy saying? What's the guy say in Randolph? I ain't scared of him. I just don't want him following me around.
Exactly. Well, we had been to a cemetery years ago, and we had just bought a brand new truck. And I had my dowsing wires. And when I got out of the truck, the dowsing wires were hanging out of my bag and scratched all the way down the side of our brand new pickup, did about $2,000 worth of damage to our pickup. And I said, well, maybe I should have said that the people's graves we went to, my cousin turned state's evidence, and that's why they were hung. And so I can't go in my husband's vehicles anymore with a camera that has been to a cemetery, and he will not go to a cemetery with me.
Sounds like he needs a license plate Ecto too if he's going to haul you around. I mean, so, well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We've mentioned your episodes that were on the Ozarkian Folk Chronicles. What are you all up to, and how can people follow what you're some of the things you're working on?
Well, right now we, Angel and I, along with Hayden Head, we're working on finishing up a book we're writing about the Melba tornado of 1920.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a pretty good book. We've researched for years and years,
decades.
Yes. And we are including not only a historical fiction story about the people of Melva, but we are including all of our research in this one book. And our work with the Hillcrofters are keeping me pretty busy with our new journal.
Well, you very graciously sent me a copy of the journal the other day. I haven't had the chance to really read through the whole thing, but it's sitting on the coffee table. Looks like a very well put together publication. And, a lot of hats off to you all, because I grew up in the days when you could get a little grant money and you could do, the Historical Society could do a quarterly, or there was some just funds raised, or they funded it by selling it. I think it started off as a grant though. And those are all kind of, that's just kind of past. There was some pretty journalism in those. So hats off to you all for doing that and bringing more Ozark stories to the forefront of the conversation about the area.
A lot of stories still to be told.
Now, do you have... This won't get out probably till the end of the week. Do the Hillcrofters have any upcoming events?
We have our book bazaar that is this Saturday at Bonnybrook, starting at 2:00. And then we have our Cabin Fever show in February. And we are getting ready to make a big announcement about that.
Well, be sure to keep us on the list to let us know what's going on with future shows, the Cabin Fever show and what have you. I will probably have a day lead on that. So if you like Ozark books or want to meet some Ozark authors, I understand maybe Todd Parnell's going to be there. Who else?
We've got several people several local authors that will be there.
Tom Coob, maybe.
It'll be fun. Yeah, Tom will be there.
Okay,
for sure.
good. Good. So if you're interested, be sure to check that event out. They can go to Bonnie Brooks' Facebook page and find that, or where would they, or the Hillcrofters Facebook page?
It's on the Hillcrofters page as well.
And that, to repeat that, that's the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters.
Correct.
So, all right. Well, folks, we appreciate you joining us today for our visit and conversation on burying grounds, tombs, and crypts. I love doing that voice. On this platform and all platforms where you get your podcasts, be sure to check out TikTok. Been posting some shorts on TikTok, along Instagram and Facebook. Basically some smaller topics or some teaser topics about what we're going to be talking about next on the podcast. So give those a look, particularly if you're low on dopamine. The Wild and Woolly Ozarks TikTok page is a dopamine shot. You'll think you're on red soda pop if you're not careful. All right. Maybe you have a local mystery legend or historical fact that needs plumbed or investigated. Or maybe you have a wild story to share. Or maybe you want to tell us something important that's going on like we heard today. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at Wild and Woolly Ozarks. That's 2 O's, 2 L's at gmail.com. I want to thank my producer, Kenneth Herren, my son, media coordinator, Raina Barth. My other son, Klein W. Herren, takes care of all our collections. He is also considered house wise guy. Well, until the next time, y'all be careful. And boys, if you would, please be good to the tourists. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.